I mean, what are you up to exactly nowadays? Are you doing like training and like classes and stuff
Well,
for people?
I, I just left training, so right now I'm in California.
Okay.
We have a tax business. My family has a tax business, and I'm VP of that business. So
Oh,
during tax season, I'll come out to Central California and help with that. On
okay.
top of that, I do the, the career that I'm in now is executive protection. So I do executive protection. I teach seminars here and there whenever I do have time, and I try to keep up with my training as much as possible and teach when I can. So I'm
Okay.
all over the place, and
Yeah,
especially
no kidding.
this time of year, tax season starts to get busy. So on top of that, on top of the career that I chose, on top of trying to train and stay in some sort of shape
Right.
is another thing.
Well, a woman of many talents. There's no doubt about that. So I
I
totally,
try, definitely
yeah.
try.
Of course, of course. Well, again, I mean, a big part of history, as I mentioned to you in our DMs, like that's why it's very important for me to get to chat with you. You're obviously, perhaps the most important part is you kick things off in Bellator history. So thank you again for, being willing to talk about it a little bit. So I mean, we can just jump right in the time machine, and go back. Then I
Okay.
mean, I gotta just start off with asking you, like, when you look back now, what do you remember kind of the most about just when you were first joining Bellator and that point in your career and what it kind of felt like and just that kind of overall experience at that exact time when it was kicking off.
Oh my goodness, it was such a long time ago
Right.
now. Um, it was, when I started fighting, I was always super competitive, so I knew I always wanted to be a professional athlete. I just didn't know what I was going to be. And then after I was done playing college soccer and I found fighting, um, I just hit the ground running with that. And I think within like a year of time, I signed with Bellator. And I wasn't even supposed to be a part of that tournament that they had. I was supposed to be brought in um, as a warm up fight for Rosie Sexton, who was already slated to be a part of that tournament. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was just I had nothing to lose. You know, the huge underdog. She was, I think, ranked number one in the world at 125. She was like either I think she was number two seed right behind Megumi Fujii,
Mm-hmm.
and it was at a weight class that I had never made, which was that they made a weight class. Well, they didn't make a weight class. The weight class they were going to have that tournament at was at 115, which was strawweight.
Yeah.
I was a flyweight at that time, and the lowest I got down to was 125. So they asked me if I wanted to take that fight against Rosie Sexton at 120, and at that point in time, I was like, shit, why not? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
let's see if I can make this happen. And at that point in time, I was on a winning streak. I was doing well, and I was like, shit, I got nothing to lose, might as well. Um, so I didn't really sign with them. It was just a fight. It was one fight against Rosie Sexton, and then after I knocked her out, within that 2 minutes, and she was unable to move forward in the tournament because of the I think it was I didn't know I could make 120. And after struggling to make 120, I was like, shit. I mean, and then that's when I signed for that tournament.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of crazy how it just kind of snowballed right off the victory then, right?
Yeah, I mean, it all happened so fast, and one thing right into another, and then the next fight. From what I remember, the next fight was I think 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks after that. That was against Jessica Penne.
Mm-hmm.
After that fight at 115, I had another fight. I think it was the same thing. It was like I think it was within a month, and that was against Jessica Aguilar. After that fight, again, I think I had a little more time, and then that last fight was against Megumi
Mm-hmm.
Fujii. So, and that was all
All very
from
close
what I
together.
remember. Yeah, they were all really close together, and I was naturally a lot bigger. I was easily walking around at 145, so having to cut all that weight within 4 to 6 weeks
Yeah.
every month was probably the hardest thing that I've ever had to do. I mean, I dealt with so many like medical issues after that. I couldn't get below 145 after that. I was cutting weight to grapple in tournaments after that. It was I had a lot of issues after that tournament, but honestly, from what I remember, it really was all worth it.
I mean, this is really insane, and I'm very embarrassed to kind of it all hitting me right now. But I never actually realized how short of a time span that was because it was all 2010, and you had 7 fights that year, and against like the highest caliber of opponents you could have in that tournament, and then to come out how you did, and you just like making the weight by itself, like that is really a even more mind blowing accomplishment. You see how close it was together like that. That doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, no, I honestly don't even know how I did it. Like, I remember like the trauma from it.
Yeah.
That's what I really remember. I was cutting so much weight, such large amounts of weight all the time. I lived on a treadmill. It was
Right.
and everybody that I fought was way more experienced than I was. I mean, by the time I had won that tournament, I had been fighting professionally for 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I had seven. I think it was 9 or 7 fights that first year, and then I think it was 5 the next year. But within that short amount of time, I had so many fights, cut so much weight, fought a lot of the top women in the world, and I honestly don't even know how I did it. I remember waking up for that last fight against Megumi Fujii, trying to make that weight at 115 because we had to make that 115 mark, and I had to struggle that entire tournament trying to make that weight every single time because I would blow up right back to my natural weight at 145, 140, and then 4 to 6 weeks later I had to drop again, and I was traumatized. Like going into saunas after that, fighting any time after that, it was bad. So I honestly don't remember a lot of it. Like a lot of what I do,
a lack of hydration.
Yeah, what I would get from my sister, because she was with me the entire time. She's like, "Yeah, you passed out. You woke up with the paramedics. You this and that," and she's just like, "You became bulimic that last fight. Like you would wake up just crying, like, oh my God, I gained weight. I didn't do anything." And I was just like, I don't remember any of that. And she was like, it was pretty bad.
Yeah, a little
but
scary.
We were all glad when it was over. So
yeah.
I mean, all I remember from it was just trauma.
Right.
But just for whatever reason, like I knew I had to finish. I knew I had to get through it all, and somehow I did. So.
Well, yes, big props to you on that. And I mean, it's like that's one of the more fascinating things I've kind of gathered from talking to people about this time period. Like I also spoke to Rosie, I spoke to Jessica, I spoke to Megumi. I've talked to a lot of them who were also a part of this. Jessica Aguilar, close with her. The thing that a lot of them like mentioned was, and I wanted to ask you this, but you kind of answered it already, but how you made that decision between like strawweight and flyweight. But it just sounds like from talking to you and all of them, like the options were just so limited. It was kind of like promotions told you guys where to go because it wasn't at this time, those options weren't just readily available like now where, the divisions are just kind of all over the place in whatever organization you can get into essentially, or however you want to phrase it. But at that time, it just seems like you took what you could get. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, very. I mean, there was no other option. It was, this is what we have. This is a world tournament at 115. And at that point in time, that was the biggest, baddest. And it was just like, okay, well, I don't really have any other options but to fight at 125 or 135 for Strikeforce. And that wasn't my natural weight class. When I fought Miesha Tate at 135, that's when I realized, okay, well, I don't have wrestling, and I don't have jiu-jitsu, and obviously I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So I need to figure out what my weight class is, and that's when I got the call for Bellator for 120, and I was like, I've never made that weight, but fuck it, let's do it.
Yeah.
So, and at that point in time, that's when I realized that this actually isn't my weight either, but, I really didn't have any other options. So let's try not to die, but let's kill ourselves making this weight and figuring this out.
There you go. So, do you remember like the feeling at least of winning the title and kind of the accomplishment of getting through it? Obviously, assuming it was pretty relieving to be like, all right, we did make it through this and capture and make all this history and stuff.
It really was a huge weight off my shoulders. I've never worked so hard in my life for anything, and I think just to get to that point, because I wasn't supposed to be in that tournament. I wasn't supposed to make it past the first girl, the second girl, especially not Megumi Fujii. I remember people just talking about how great all these fighters were, and they had been around for years at that point in time, and I was brand new to the scene. I'd maybe been training Muay Thai for less than a year, never had any jiu-jitsu, never had any wrestler. I was just an athlete, and being a part of that and actually going in there and people were not happy about it. Like, and I still remember to this day, that was a huge thing. Everybody was super upset because it wasn't the way it was supposed to go. It was Megumi Fujii was supposed to win that, and especially going 22-0, people were pretty upset. But for me,
I was deal.
Like, I was like, I wasn't even supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to make it past the first round like everybody else before me, and for me, it was just like none of these people have any idea how hard it was for me to even get here or to make it to each fight, let alone to fight. So for me, it was a huge weight off my shoulders. I've never been so proud of myself, just making that weight and fighting, and it was the greatest feeling. I felt like I was on top of the world, and at that point in time, I was.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. So it was great.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, with that in mind, I have to ask you, and you mentioned it there was the criticism, and it's interesting you pointed out about not having supposed to been in the tournament, and maybe they just didn't know it or whatnot. But a lot of the things I've heard from your peers and whatnot was the critique about the weight and the fact that you were a bigger girl and then left the division after. A lot of people are a little salty, I guess you could say, about that. But I'm curious how you reacted to that when it kind of, I guess, was initially happening, and how people still talking about it today. But that's kind of the thing that they latch on to, is how, Zoila was actually a flyweight competing at strawweight. Like, just how do you take that?
For me, it was like, but I made the weight.
Right.
That's the thing, and I was super dehydrated fighting every single one of those fights that I fought in. You could tell by the damage. Like, it was any little thing, and my face would blow up. My hand, anytime I tried to make that 115 after that, like I broke my hand, my face was broken, like every little thing. It was, to me, people can continue to talk shit for however long, but the way it ended was the way it was supposed to. I made it through. I got to those fights. I fought those fights. None of them finished me. Mm-hmm. They were all way more experienced than I was. So bigger, stronger, whatever it is, I'm sorry, I still made it, and my hand was raised at the end of each one of those, and it took me a while to actually I wouldn't say get over that, but it was just something that, for whatever reason, when it comes to women's MMA, or when it comes to women in general, they don't let go of shit for anything. Right. And for me, it was just like, I don't have to prove anything to anybody. Like, I don't have to explain anything to anybody. Like, if they could, and a lot of those girls ended up dropping down to 105. So it's like, well, Jessica Panay became a world champion
right
at
after
105.
That, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, you're coming to me and or not coming to me, because none of them would really say much. They would just talk shit online, and I'm like, okay, that's great. Cry me a river. I did something that a lot of people have never been able to do and will never do. So it's like, for me, it didn't really matter to me. Mm-hmm. I made the weight. I fought. I won. And I did a lot, and a lot of it was, everybody wanted Megumi Fujii to win that, and to be honest, like 22-0, like that was something that when they finally put this up, and everybody just wanted to see that happen, and to have this girl that has not been on the scene for that long at all compared to everybody else in the tournament to take it, they were upset. Everybody was really upset, and it just happened to be me. So sorry, I'm not sorry.
Does it bother you when people call that fight a robbery too? Because that's a thing that will get criticized as well.
No, not at all. Because when it comes to people actually going back and not watching the fight, but the scores when the scorecards came out, and then people that actually weren't my friends that came back with those scorecards to me, and they were like, that there was a lot of damage to your face, but nobody fucking hurt you. Nobody actually took you down. The points were the way they were supposed to be, and people were just fucking upset because you were this new shining object, and
the story aspect.
You talked a lot of and you talk a lot of shit, and people don't like that, and for me, I was like, I really don't give a fuck. I don't care. It's like I worked so hard. I worked so damn hard, and I know that I'll always be there, but for me, I'm just like, okay, cool, cry me a river. It's not going to change. It's not going to change history. I'm sorry.
Exactly. And to counter kind of some of the weight claims too, we have to mention that you did end up going back to strawweight in your career, so you can kind of throw that at people too. Like, I did end up going back to it.
Oh, I try. Like at that point in time, like, and the thing is I wanted to fight again at 115, but after I tore my ACL, to come back to 115, I was like, okay, well, we'll come back at 125, and then we'll work our way down. And then that's when they got rid of the women's division completely. So it was like there wasn't even a reason to go down to 115 again. And then when RFA called, and that was for a championship fight, and for me, it was like, okay, 115. Let's see if we can make this again.
Right.
At that point in time, I figured, okay, it has to be 115 on the dot, and we were on our way. We were working with doctors to get down into healthy weight, and then I ended up getting hurt. I think it was like 3 weeks before that, and the timeline that we had to make that weight, it just ruined that entire thing. And I had a manager at that time that was like, oh, you can do this. You can beat this girl with one arm, because I had a torn labrum. And the stubborn me was like, nobody's going to tell me that I can't do this.
Yeah.
So of course I go in, and without that time, I didn't make the weight. I made 116, woke up to a paramedic trying to stick me with a needle. And I was like, shit.
Oh, man, yeah.
I'm not going to make this weight, but fuck it, let's fight. Like it is what it is. So I came in at 116.2, and at that point in time, like with the coaches that I had at that point, we were just like, we're not going down to 115 again. Like this, it shouldn't have went this way. Like we should have at least asked for another 4 weeks, or however long it took to recover. But we still went in there, we fought, and that's when you could tell, like, my face was broken, I broke my hand, I got a hairline fracture on my foot, my torn labrum that was still there, broken nose, orbital, like, all within that first round. So I was in there trying to fight. Yeah, no, and it showed, like, I cannot make this weight. I just can't, like, I pushed my body to the limit, and it showed that it's just not something that I should do again. So that was the last time that I tried to make 115 again. And that's when the UFC, I think, added 115.
Right.
So they had 135, and then they added 115, and that was the reason why we tried to go back down to 115, and we're like, fuck it, like we can't do it. We're not going to do it. So when and if they add 25, then we'll go to 25.
Yeah. Do you know if Bellator had a plan beyond the tournament? Like, did they want you to defend, or what was kind of the aftermath of, like, all right, I did it, I got through this, I'm not cutting this weight anymore? Do you know what exactly they were thinking with that?
Yeah, that was the plan. The plan was to fight again at 115, because they wanted to see that Aguilar fight. They wanted to possibly see that Megumi Fujii fight, and that's what we were going to do. But then I tore my ACL. So coming back after that, that's when they said that they would offer 125 to, I believe, Aguilar, but they something about her not taking it at 125. First she said yes, and then she said no. I don't know exactly how or what the true answer to that is, but she didn't end up wanting to take it at 125. And then our plan was to drop back down to 115 and then fight again. But by the time all that came to, they just completely got rid of the women's division, from what I remember.
Yeah. Yeah, weren't patient enough, I guess. I mean, come on, guys, but here we are now. So
yeah, I mean, it was such a long time ago. And from what I remember, it was just, I just had a like sour taste on my mouth from all of that. I mean, Bjorn Rebney promised the world, and he did not deliver on any of it. So it was just something. When it came to Bellator, it was just not something that at the tail end of it, when it all kind of fell apart, I was like, I don't want anything to do with this promotion anymore. So
yeah, fair enough. And you're definitely not alone in that case. We know that much at this point. But I mean, that makes me very fascinated to know, for you and from your standpoint too, Zoila, what it was like when you jumped to Invicta. Then, I mean, obviously a massive part of history for the women as well. And, you know, Shannon, all she's done, like, what was that like? How did that feel, being a part of, you know, the beginning of that? And once you saw that was an opportunity and a thing like that was available?
Oh man, that, like, as soon as I heard about Invicta, I was like, let's do it. Like it was a beautiful thing. All women's promotion, like, and they had all these superstars going there, and to make a name for women's MMA. It was definitely something that I was excited to be a part of, and to fight at 125. I was like, yes, thank God, finally a division and a lot of girls to fight in the division. So it was great.
Yeah, of course, it's very cool to see it still kicking too, and Shannon doing great things, bringing them to Boston for the last event, and always trying to be different. Open scoring, I mean, that's a fun thing. Let me ask you about that real quick. Do you think that that should be more of a normalized thing? Because it's funny, we talk about other sports and all, and how everyone knows the score and what's going on, but in MMA, everyone's in the dark. Like, how do you feel about that?
I think it's great. I think it's a great idea. I think it's something that should be implemented for sure. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Hell yeah.
Yeah, of course. So, well, Zoila, I appreciate you taking the time. I don't want to take you too much longer here, but I got to ask, though, of course, I mean, at this stage, MMA retirement's never last. I don't know if you ever said you officially retired, but is there any chance of you returning possibly at this point?
You know, I never officially retired, but I'm 40 now. And as soon as the pandemic hit, I mean, I had 12 fights. I had 12 fights fall through between that time, like,
that's
within a matter of 3 within a matter of 3 years. And at that point I was like, I can't make money like this.
Right.
I never officially retired, and it was at a point where I was just like, I was getting older. And then I tore my ACL again right as I made that show at 125 for the UFC, and I was like, man, I can't keep doing this. Like, I love fighting. Till this day, I wish, you know, if something came my way, there's no way I would not be able to say no, you know, but to be able to get somebody to stand across for me is, for whatever reason, has been a difficult thing for any promotion to do. So, I mean, I never officially retired. And I honestly still see myself fighting at least Muay Thai again. But who knows? We'll see. Hopefully. I remember my manager at the time, Sucker Punch, because I ended up signing with Sucker Punch, that was the last management that I was with, and he approached me about possibly fighting Clarissa Shields in PFL, and I was like, hell yeah. I was like, I'll fight her at 155. I was like, she's a boxer. I had no problem fighting boxers. Because even to this day, it's like, what fights can I get? What are sure fights, you know?
Yeah.
So, and even when Kabate had that special forces, who was it? Alana,
yes.
I think it was a trans fighter.
McLaughlin,
I was same thing. I was like, I'll fight him. And then again, I was like, maybe I shouldn't do that, because it's just making it okay for them to continue to fight women. And I was that's probably not a positive for women. for women's sports. But for me, I was like, if I can't get any other fights, like, I'll do it.
Let's
like,
go.
I'll
Yeah.
do it. Even when the UFC was looking for opponents for Cyborg at 145, I was like, I'll fucking do it. Like, take me, I'll do it. But for whatever reason, nothing came to, you know. So at this point in time, I'm 40. I just turned 40 in December, but you know, if I'm approached with a good fight, and it's more than likely something that would happen, you know, with a good paycheck, hell yeah, I'll do it. But you know, we shall see.
Yes, of course. Is bare knuckle off the table, because they seem pretty down for anybody?
You know, honestly, I was approached by that too.
I'm not surprised. Everyone is.
When my name was thrown out there but like when they had signed Paige, when I was thrown out there towards her, from what we got from bare knuckle was their camp said, hell no, never.
Oh wow.
So I was like, okay, well, find somebody else. And
yeah.
I think we tried for about a year, and they couldn't find anybody. So I was like, well, shit. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, for me, fighting is fighting, and I love to fight. So I don't know. I'm always gonna miss it, and I'll always be up to it. So we'll see. Hopefully, something can come to.